let's get to the next region, the final region. Yes. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hi, Anne. Hi, Tim. Yes, Tim.
Hello.
Okay.
So, Olivera, now the stage is all yours.
Shall we start?
I think it's now Tim's. I think it's Tim's turn.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This is incredible how it's just come together, like you said, Olivia, in literally a few weeks. So if there's anyone that's going to, it's been a very seamless passing of the baton. So if there's anyone that's going to make a complete idiot of it, that'll be me. So just warning you, but thanks for having me. I just wanted to first do a little thing that we do in Australia, which is where we're from, which is called an acknowledgement of country. And so, my background is Indigenous Australian. Australia has been around with the Indigenous people for about between 70 and 90,000 years. And so, as you can see on this map here, there was over 200 and something different countries within Australia. So for all those thousands of years, people looked after boundaries like they were streets or postcodes. And so what used to happen is that you would walk up to a boundary and you would wait, and then you'd make a sound, or you would announce your presence. And then after the right amount of time, whether it's a few minutes, a few days, a few weeks even, you would receive a response. And so this was a way of maintaining a very beautiful, balanced out ecosystem. And then you would proceed to onto other people's land. So from one generation to the next, these boundaries would change. So it was a living country. And so what we do now it's become a little bit politically stale, but going back to what it was used for, we like to acknowledge the people of this country, and everyone else for that matter too. So can people see my ridiculously large mouse cursor? So yes. my people from up here, Borroloola, which is one of the little tiny countries up here. I live in Sydney down here, and I would like to acknowledge all these wonderful, beautiful ancestors that have been here for thousands of years. And lovely Olivia is down in Wurundjeri country. Ian is up in Bundjalung country, and I am normally in Gadigal country, although I'm overseas at the moment. So I just wanted to do a little bit of an Australian thing to start with. So my name's Tim Moriarty. I'm Indigenous Australian. My Aboriginal name is Bundian, which means cheeky brown snake. And I'm very lucky to have a strong connection to my background in Indigenous history. So welcome everyone. So also wanted to show a little bit about our country before we move on. And I am blown away by the incredible intellect and clarity and all the incredible work people have done over the last couple of days, watching some very, very intimidating but also inspiring, very, very clever people. So I thought I'd change tact a little bit with our group. Will be a little bit about philosophy, a bit about why with AI, but I wanted to show you a bit about our country. So this is Western Australia. And in Western Australia, we've got rock art up Wandjina, which is between 11,000 and 50,000 years old. And it's about our ancestral beings. So this is about the style of Indigenous culture. Again, I apologise. I'll keep coming to an Indigenous angle as we've decided to focus on culture and wisdom. And lovely Olivia and Ian will tell you about their focuses. So this is Western Australia. This is the Kimberley. This is a very special land to a lot of artists that are renowned. And this is where I currently live, which is New South Wales, which is a Sydney shop. And like I said before, my family came from Borroloola. So this is a monolithic ancient structure called the Lost City. So that's a little bit about what Australia looks like. So I wanted to talk about where I've come from. And that is that for us Indigenous people, we didn't have a word for art, and we didn't have a word for culture. And so art was literally science. It was about storytelling. It was about how we preserve a science and a very sensitive relationship to the land with the world's oldest ecologists. And so all of that information was passed down through song or image, art, or dance, movement. And so these three vehicles, it was what we call now creativity. So a very different concept back then. So in this incredible world of AI, and technology for that matter, we're looking to say, how can we start to regenerate some of this cultural loss? And there's some not very nice statistics that people may or may not be aware of, but there was invasion of Australia. That's how we've formed this balance at the moment. So there's a lot of very negative connotations with Indigenous culture. So I won't be focusing on that. My body of work over my career, and I'll show you some bits and pieces, has been a very positive approach, and I very much honour the negative stuff that's happened, but I wanted to focus a little bit on where we're going. Okay, so this is a little bit about my background. As I said, I've been didn't actually say, but I'm an artist, and my expression's been in the musical arena as well as visual arts. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, for example, this is a piece that I have built, and it's being built at the new airport. So you can see in the middle here, you've got the ancient kind of, we call them sky stories. So in a modern context, how can we turn this experience into what's in a modern language, you know, instead of a painting? So this piece has been built at the new airport. It's about 30 to 40 meters tall. When you're flying into the country in the right alignment, you will see for a brief second all these lights line up and you see the emu dreaming, and it's a welcome just like we had before. So that's an example of translating a principle, which is you have to be in the story, which is moving. It's about connectivity, and this is the outcome. So thinking about this point as a translation piece, I'm going to come back to some of these things later. And I have found a technology company called Jalili, and we've based this basically on Indigenous principles that have now become universal. And I think this is very fitting because I'm just going to go through some of these things that are their principles. So imagine 16 years ago, I was out in the country. You saw some of those pictures before. And here I am watching some of these kids, exceptional rhythm, exceptional creativity, great spatial awareness, but no opportunity. And so I'm so lucky I grew up in the city. I had, and the bush, so backwards and forwards. I'm very privileged to have a foot in both worlds. And I gained my confidence and my self-expression, and you could call self-determination, through music. And so I thought, oh, it's really unfair. What do kids do with their need to stimulate their brains? They'll get into trouble, antisocial behaviour, substance, throwing rocks at things, exactly the types of things I would do if I hadn't been lucky enough to have this path. So, yeah, so I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if all those things like socio-economic boundaries or access to technology, access to equipment, you could just take that off the playing field and suddenly you could hotwire this beautiful talent, these cultural stories, and we could share that with the world. So that was the founding principle. So Indigenous people have a very, Australian Indigenous have slightly different cognitive profiles. And I'm going to talk again a little bit later at a few use case scenarios, such as environmental intelligence and how we function and why we've had problems fitting in to a mainstream, school without such compassion. And so I want to talk about that later when we go into a roundtable discussion. But I wanted a technology that embraces the different ways that people learn or create. So AI is just perfect for this. You know, AI can meet people where they are at. So we've spoken about the low socio-economic disadvantage, and this is just a metaphor, by the way. Indigenous focus is for me, but this applies, I think, something we can take to the world. And I know that a lot of you wonderful people have started to cover some of these things in our previous speeches. Another thing is place should not restrict where you are creating things. So, you see those paintings earlier on. The beauty of these things, I can go back. So this artwork here is by a very, very famous artist called Emily Uware. And people probably don't realise that a few years ago, that one, the highest paid artwork in Australia was one female and two Indigenous. And she started painting at a very late age in her late 80s. No training, no formal training. One of her pieces was owned by Elton John, sold for $5 million. So beautiful national treasure. And you can see the color, how it relates to her country. So we have a strong association with country based on story. I'll just find my place here. And if there's a sense of disconnection, then we're not going to be able to self-express. And that may go for other cultures as well. So music, for example, I didn't much appreciate the fact that if I'm going to write music, I have to do all this training. I have to be in a little dark room with cables and software. But what about being able to create anything in a different context, such as on a basketball court or in country? So that's another founding principle. With this technology, we can open that up. I'm going to cover this a little bit later again in the round discussion, but we've got a lot of custodial structures which have been handed down for thousands of years. So another variation is songlines, which governs such things as permissions, just like the welcome to country, permissions and information about family and who can intermarry, all those types of sciences woven into that kind of thing. So in that, it was recognized that many people have different roles in society. And so, again, AI is now a mechanism that can to meet people where they are at. So we also wanted to dive into the neuroscience of music and healing. The didgeridoo is an example. I'm sure people are aware of that instrument. It's a long piece of wood which is hollowed out naturally by white ants, and they're cut down, they're a ceremonial object. But what happens neurologically is over tens of thousands of years, the low frequency range and the incredible precision that is used in ceremony and song and rhythm develops a different part of the brain. So we want to learn what this does, how it does it, and can we use this in healing? And again, we've spoken about connecting with country. So yeah, so that's formed me. Sorry, this is what has inspired me. Come on, you silly thing. This has inspired me with an incredible team of people in Sydney to create this music platform. We think that making music should be available to everyone and every community. Now, the problem that we have is that a lot of our competitors and other AI movements scrape people's data. There's no respect of copyright. I mean, why would there be? Because they can do it. There's no boundaries. There's no jurisdictions. And so we've got a huge era of data anxiety, and I think rightfully so. So we would like to mimic in our security policies and the way that we create this software, how do we respect people's stories and people's data and people's creativity in a creative economy that we are building. And again, we'll talk a little bit about policy later. So people like to work in different ways. Some like to be collaborative, others like to work individually. And so recognizing these different ways of working is a really wonderful way that AI in our culture can embrace that. So another overall mission point is that we want technology to be a partner to us, not something that is done at us, not something that we don't really understand, but how can it build and strengthen our culture? How can it show once that happens, a lot more people can understand the beautiful, important parts of our culture that, like I said before, politically has been overlooked or misunderstood, because a lot of people have a lot of guilt about what's happened in Australia. We make up 3.8% of the Australian population, and which is about 900 and something thousand people, less than 1 million people population, which is tiny. And so a lot of wonderful people have this sense of guilt, and so there's a big disconnect. So how can we have an AI technology that can build compassion on both sides of the fence to join people together, which is probably one of our biggest internal missions, if it's an Australian focus, but we want this to be global. So yeah, and we spoke about this before. Many different neurodivergent types of people have different ways of creating different aspects that I'd like to use this for. So how can we think about AI supporting that, not being merged into one big homogenized blob? And we'd also like people to feel safe. So there's a big sense of unsafety, like lack of safety, I should say, in cultures all around the world, especially so with Indigenous Australia. So we think that's a good metaphor or paradigm to work around and to work with, to then share that with the rest of the world. So the bigger picture is that we want to translate these Indigenous principles in AI and influence policy. And we want to have a place where all people are enabled and empowered, and not just a select band. I was in a policy discussion for the Australian government, because at the moment we are scrambling to develop policy, and the technology is just rapidly happening so much faster than policy can keep up with. Yeah, so I thought we'd pick out some points about compassion, and in a creative and safe environment, people need to feel nurtured and safe, and that their difference is a great thing, not something that's going to be a problem or people be shy about. So here are some of the we've decided to go a little less what's mainstream, and I know these probably sound like generic catchphrases which everyone's used to, but very much if we hold our own technology up to these measures, these metrics, then we're happy. So well-being, is it something that makes us feel safer? Does this technology absolutely respect people's rights right from the start? I mean, there's huge uproar, and deservedly so, that artists feel like they have no control over what they have spent lifetime creating. And so we would like to build a human or a people-centered ecosystem where people feel safe. Fairness, if there's people collaborating on something, how can we recognize different people's contribution? How can we encode that into processes? How can we have a fairness of airtime if there's a group or a collaborative approach? How can that be measured? Privacy, I mentioned before, relates to data anxiety, and also relates back to Indigenous custodial law. There are certain things we're allowed to know, certain things that we have to then unknow, or that we're not allowed to know. And so respecting these boundaries becomes very important to, influencing how we construct a metaphor version of this with AI. Transparency, we've been there, accountability and sustainability. So yeah, these are some points just wanted to say with the policy discussion that everyone is, very proud of Australia. We were the inventors of the Transformer AI neural network with latent space, and we realised that, wow, our skills are up here, and a lot of appeal to that with the American market. And America is, with financing, is way better than us. So how can we leverage that with each other and work with each other? So some of the things that we were moving so fast we hadn't even thought about were sustainability. What is the impact this will have in the environment? Footprint, how do we put this into policy? Again, being the world's oldest ecology, there's an opportunity to learn from many Indigenous cultures around the world, but particularly in my perspective, Indigenous. So, yeah, like I said, we're scrambling to create policy. And what I would like to see from our discussion with the panel and audience people is how can we get policy to catch up? Should we govern this? I mean, is there a governance issue? Is it a self-determination issue? Is it things that we have to, treat internally and externally in terms of countries? If this is going to decentralize power, how do we approach that? So I am going to, in a second, hand over to the wonderful Olivia. And yeah, so next steps, this is my LinkedIn profile. If people wanted to connect, I would love that. Like I said, we're trying to launch a creative ecosystem where artists are respected. We're going to be profiling what people are doing with music. We're going to be empowering all sorts of technologies in this ecosystem, and we are going to release this in a few weeks. So if people would like to jump on there and just show their interest, that would be great. But I'd like to hand over to Olivia, if that's okay.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tim. Or is it Bandian? Your name
Bandian means cheeky brown snake.
There you go. I thought I'll try and write it down and remember it. I think it's always nice. Pandian. Okay. Thank you for that presentation. It's been quite insightful, even for us who live in Australia. You definitely taught us something new. And I love your insights from the Indigenous perspective. So, and the fact that you're, doing things with music and helping others, absolutely part of compassion and caring for other people. So, absolutely love that. I will open up my presentation so it makes it easier for me to follow. Yeah, so okay, so I'm Olivera, or Oli Tomic. I'm the founder of 8People. It's an AI consulting agency. We're based in Melbourne, in Australia, a beautiful city as any other Australian city, I must say. And so if you're watching from somewhere from overseas, I strongly encourage you to come and visit us. It's a great place to live and travel and see so many beautiful things, as you've seen on some of the photos already. Today we'll cover the topic of human and AI partnership. And then I will look at that from the organizational point of view, because we're sort of either employees or we're entrepreneurs, so I think it's an important subject. But before we start, I would like to pause and just reflect. I mean, if we think about COVID, we see the time when, well, before that, we really didn't know much about AI. Very few people knew what was going on in that space. And, just after COVID, AI sort of started popping out as a topic and we started to engage. I must say that I started looking into AI sort of technology, if you like, for the last maybe 7 years or so, more so because I had a bit of a love for technology, but also I started to realize how important this technology is going to be in helping us with our work. So back in late 2021 or maybe early 22, when I was working for an organization, I came across an AI solution that would be really great for me to use in my work, which was creating video content for training enterprise sales teams. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I really need to try and trial this. So what I did is I approached the leaders in the business to obviously pay for the subscription, which, they were a little bit surprised, and I was asked to check what other tools we have in the company that can help me. But I was luckily persistent and I got approved, which was at that time only $35 a month. So we have access to a platform where I can design it however I like. I can choose an avatar that can speak for me. And also I created a narration. So this was created then into a video that would train our teams. So as part of that, I obviously tested this with a couple of our sales team members, and they were blown away by the avatar and what it did. So just that little example, that was my first introduction of an AI solution that was successful, that was, I was able to basically transform part of my work and deliver so much more. Obviously, since then, there have been so many AI tools and everyone's experimenting with it. But these AI tools, we know that they can think and do things faster than us. But of course, they still don't have the human touch and feel. Now, I'm not suggesting they may not in the future. We don't know what's going to happen. But what we do know is we are actually leveraging these tools to help us do our work, whether it's faster, more efficient, or whatever it is. So, and these days we have a record use of AI tools such as ChatGPT, where weekly usage is around 700 billion active users. So which is absolutely unbelievable. But as we're building AI today, we are sorry, I'll just bring that back. I wanted to mention a couple of other things. As we're building these AI tools these days, it's important that we innovate, and how do we lead in this space? Now, tech companies are racing to this. We've started with AI, sorry, and then we went to AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which is helping us create content. It's scraping information, whether it's allowed or not allowed to do, and we're moving towards artificial super intelligence. Obviously, a lot of leaders and visionaries are talking about this, and we're not there, but we'll be getting there, maybe even in 10 years or so. Everyone's got different predictions. I wanted to touch briefly on the agenda. I think it's important that we just cover a few topics. It's only a brief presentation. So we'll touch on what is compassion and why it matters, what is happening right now, some of the risks. How can AI elevate human purpose and what you can do? And right at the end, I propose several ideas for consideration. So what is compassion and why it matters? Compassion means different things for different cultures. We heard yesterday from various speakers that were based in Japan, in Osaka, where this event started yesterday at 12 p.m. our time in Australia. They spoke about passion and what it means to them. So I will just take this opportunity to read a few notes that I took and from the meaning of compassion. So it was energy, quality, and virtue. It was listening without judgment, awareness from the heart, respect and patience. There was also a reference to how we checked our ego. I really love that one. And spirit of Awai, which is meaning openness to the third answer, because sometimes we can get stuck with black and white answers and things like that, but it's really openness about, more feedback. But for me, compassion is really about doing the right thing and respecting others. I was fortunate enough to live on these continents, and I realized by interacting with the people, whether on a personal level through business, my dealings and working there, I realized this means there are different cultural sensitivities and different things that are sort of that people value. So if we look at Asia, and even from yesterday's event in Japan, we see harmony and humility. Really love that. And I think some cultures can learn from this. From living in Africa, for example, I saw a very strong community and care about each other. I was witnessing, women cooking in the middle of the village for the whole village, where their kids would be looked after automatically by whoever's around there. And it was a very safe environment. I think we all can learn from each other in this sense. We have the responsibility of building these things into AI to make them better, because we're the builders. We may think of ourselves, well, I'm not building the AI tools, it's not my responsibility. I would argue absolutely not. We are in this transition process, in the building process of AI, and all of us are making that input. We all have an opportunity to provide all this feedback to AI to make it better, to make it more trustworthy, to give us better outcomes. Because we have to reflect diverse cultures, and compassion is our strategic advantage. So AI, as we know, is evolving very quickly. And if you read the news in the morning, there's no shortage of AI news. We see top tech companies investing millions and billions of dollars into the AI infrastructure. They're investing into AI solutions. They're racing with each other to be better and so on. Not only are tech companies investing in their own infrastructure and the solutions, but various industries are also taking advantage in transforming their businesses with AI. The leaders in this sense, the finance sector is certainly leading the way, health sector, manufacturing, cybersecurity, and so many more. I mean, even if you see an example from a few days ago, Citigroup is investing almost $3 trillion in the next 4 years. I don't know about you, but I certainly can't wrap my head around it and about the money that's going into AI and what exactly it's going to do. The tech companies that I'm working with, they've been in the business for about 10 years, and they have leaders such as Morgan Stanley, Deutsche Bank, Citibank, all working with them and investing heavily into these solutions. So we see so much money pouring in. So we might sometimes ask ourselves, are these AI tools that organizations or individuals are building, are they safe? Are they good for me? We all understand some of them are not as good as the others. And we have to be careful which ones we're using. So AI, there are a couple of really great examples of AI solutions being really good. One of them is Anthropic, and they are actually pioneering AI safety and innovation. It's in a US company founded by Dario and Daniela Amodei, and their pure focus is AI safety and innovation. So they're not rushing into anything else out there. So I feel that Anthropic is certainly going to gain a competitive advantage here, in particular for those who are looking, to if they're concerned about the information safety and so on. The other great example is Intelligent Internet. This was founded by Imad Mostaq. He was previously a CEO of Stability, and he's realized through his AI work that obviously AI can give you so much advantage. There's also a lot of disadvantage. And him having smaller kids, he's obviously asking himself questions. How will my kids, use AI? And which is absolutely a question, I think, on every parent's mind. How will they use it in a safe way? So he started this safe, intelligent internet that his kids will be able to use, not just his kids, but all these new generations. And I think also there were a few other things that triggered him to work on such a project. And one of them was where a teenage boy from the US unfortunately committed suicide. And it just makes us think that some of these AI tools are not that safe, and we need to think about how to use it. Now, apart from AI is not being as good, we also have an opportunity to change the world using AI. And one of them is healthcare. So healthcare industry it's been pretty proactive in building AI solutions. So if we look at this example from the World Economic Forum, we see that 4.5 billion people are lacking access to essential health services, which is just so unimaginable. I think for us who are living in Australia, I think it's just hard to understand. How is this possible? So AI technologies are now helping doctors, with diagnosis, with triage patients and detect early diseases, which is absolutely amazing. Healthcare sector is also developing various medicines. Now they can happen at speed, something that used to take 5, 10 years, 15 years maybe. Now it's it's only taking a fraction of a time that the new medicines can be developed and save so many lives. There are also some projects like Human Longevity Project that Peter Diamandis is the founder of this project, and they're working on prolonging human life. If you're not already following Peter Diamandis, I strongly encourage you to do so. He's a founder, visionary, he's a futurist. He holds weekly podcasts with other leaders as well. It's very, very informative. So if you want to learn about the AI space, it's absolutely a great start. Another industry that's also, as we mentioned earlier, that is leveraging AI is cybersecurity. Hackers have realized, hey, there are so many AI capabilities now. We can leverage those tools to share more phishing attacks and attack and gather your personal data and so on. You know, we are, as you can see, there's been a 1200% surge in phishing attacks. We are not surprised. We are pretty much constantly on our phones in the digital space. We manage our accounts, we manage our pension funds, and so on. So this is a great ground for hackers to come in. And so, yes, we need to be vigilant, absolutely. But this industry is actually doing a lot of work and building AI tools to help support and protect us online. What are some of the other risks? Of course, there are so many which we can't cover in such a short presentation, but I wanted to take the angle from the organization point of view and how that works with the humans. So if we look, you know, there are so many tools out there. So if you're a leader, you think, where do I start? How do I incorporate AI tools into my business? Is it safe? Who can help me? And there are no, you know, organizations that have been there long enough that you can sort of, you know, trust and you're not sure what to do about it. So those who own these organizations are obviously putting a lot of pressure, on commercial pressure, on the CEOs and the owners of the business. So, and what happens here, leaders will make a decision that is a tech decision, short-term profit first decision, and not really considering the human part of this process. In this process, there is a lot of competition, you know, with different organizations, fear of missing out. So what does that mean for the leader? They're thinking, well, if my competitor is using AI and I'm not using it, I'm already behind. Not only that, but what happens in 1 month now in an AI-enabled space used to probably take 1 year before. So they really need to think carefully, how do they move forward? And again, like I said, human spirit becomes under strain because the technology becomes the focus. What we can do if we're working in an organization, or whether whether it's a small, medium, or large size business, what we need to do is start collaborating with AI and evolve and add value, help the leaders. So as they're trying to transform their business, we already feel like we're adding value and it's uplifting our spirit. Apart from AI elevating the human, the business and how business can be more efficient and drive revenue and provide personalized experiences and so on, AI can also elevate our human purpose. We can do things that were not possible before. We have more time. If we refer to the Maslow hierarchy of needs, we can see that AI is enabling us to become faster in what we do, and we can create a better life as a result. We mentioned longevity. We're looking at expanding human life. We are looking at, like I said, having more time and so on. If we look at a few examples, so psychological needs, if we look at air, water, food, shelter, we have AI that can do water testing, air testing, shelter, can be built by robots. There is a talk that one robot would cost $30,000 per year, which is 40 cents per day. It can work maybe not 24/7, but it can work long hours. Robots are building the automotive industry, so they're building cars already. There are also examples of robots operating medically as well. So there are different trials there. In employment, we see employment is basically changing in front of our eyes. We are being more efficient with the work we do. I hope that we can have some more work-life balance as we have these tools, so we can work less and have more time with our loved ones and doing some hobbies that we really love. We're seeing some of the roles that are, admin type or repetitive type or with repetitive type of work, which is great that we're actually moving away from those type of works, but the new roles are emerging. So it's a great time to learn about these new roles and how we can add value and feel more satisfied and feel like we're adding value. So some of the roles that are emerging are like AI ethicists, AI engineers, AI project managers, and so on. Apart from the entrepreneurship, what we also see is the rise of entrepreneurship. I think from what I'm seeing is this is the best time to start your own business. And the reason for that is we all have certain skills and capabilities that maybe not everybody has. So we can leverage this with AI tools. So we can go and build tools. There are a number of no-code tools that are available out there. The cost is really low. So I encourage you to start experimenting and just making small steps, because you won't know how far they can actually take you. So yeah, and also like with the self-esteem. So AI is basically enabling us to get smarter, to get information, right now, for whether it's us speaking to ChatGPT or another AI tool while we're driving a car to a destination or whatever that is. Obviously, more knowledge we get, more we process, more self-esteem we'll have. So I think as humans, we actually can leverage AI in a very positive way. Apart from us personally leveraging AI, I think the organizations will take this opportunity to leverage AI capabilities to transform their business through massive transformative purpose. So what we might see is emergence of AI tools that will do various activities in the business with the human in the loop. So I think it's important for us to keep making these baby steps and learning and moving forward to more satisfied work and where we add more value. So as all of these changes are happening, what can you do? How can we optimize the future of the AI world? I think first, all of us have that duty to design AI for a better world, and now is the time. We need to build AI to represent humans with dignity and all our cultural aspects and so on. So as I mentioned earlier, even if you're just starting to work with AI, or you're working in an organization where AI gets introduced, start to contribute. Start to upskill in AI literacy. Try to understand what that means. Champion compassionate design straight into the first AI that you get access to. Leaders know that they need to develop their people in tech fluency, so they will be very positively, they will be very happy if you approach them that this is what you want to do. They know that we don't know how to deal with AI at this stage. So it's okay if you're making mistakes, just start. And what's important is support your family, friends, and community to drive the change. You don't underestimate the input that you will have and the effect that you will have on the people around you. So wherever you are, if you're involved in politics, economy, or wherever you are, we are there to share policies and standards which will guide the next generation of intelligence. So we're in absolutely amazing time, and I think sometimes we can't really understand what that means. So yeah, lead by example. And at the end of my presentation, again, I wanted to just provide a few ideas for consideration, and what you can do. So the first step is see AI as a partner. How can you amplify your purpose? What is it that you're doing? Start asking questions. How can AI help me in that process? It's not just for me, but also for the broader, people around you in the communities. Once you build your AI literacy and understand what AI can and cannot do, it's your start, because that will be your foundation for everything else that you do with the AI and how you get involved. I must say it's very important that you keep developing your human skills. Your human skills such as empathy, creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence. These are obviously important for us as humans, but also for building AI solutions. As I mentioned, ask how AI can help me do this better, whatever you're doing, and integrate it into your work and life. Again, I wanted to say, obviously, share that knowledge and experience. Why is that so important? AI can't work by itself. AI needs people and different inputs, and more people from different cultures, different backgrounds, different age groups, and so on, the better the input. But don't underestimate, if you're building an AI solution, try and involve as many people as possible, because your AI will be so much better, so much smarter than AI by itself. AI is not supposed to work independently, so it cannot work without us humans. So, and just want to say, enjoy the process. It's important to enjoy it. And I think once you start, if you haven't started, you will enjoy it even more. So I pose a question, what does a compassionate human AI partnership look like? It's hard to tell, but what I can tell is it will depend on us. If we provide it with the right inputs and good information, I'm sure we will see some really good partnership between us. And the last thing I want to mention is I want to refer to the essential Japanese concept of this whole event, from wa and ma, which is about harmony and pause. I think what we need to do is it's a perfect actually concept for this topic, because we're talking about how do we bring human and AI partnership together in a harmonious way, in a good way, not just for us, but the generations to come. But we also need to pause and move away from technology and be human. And so I feel like this is a great topic and a great concept that the Japanese have, one of many. And I wanted to say thank you, big thank you for joining me in this presentation. Feel free to connect via LinkedIn and follow us if you like for weekly newsletters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim and Ollie. I think it's my turn now.
Thank you, Ollie.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Ollie. And thank you, Tim. Beautiful welcome to country. Thank you for that very much. And also thanks to all the people around the world who've spoken before us. I think one of the things it points out is that there's no lack of experts, but also that there's lots of experts who know that this topic of compassion is really critical. So thanks to all of those too. Now I'm just going to do the tech thing here and share my screen. So, Tim and Ollie and I clearly following a bit of a pattern here in the sense of looking to the kind of underlying human element and the ideas of how our humanness impacts the growth and development of AI. And I think so many people in history have felt like they lived at a consequential moment when everything was going to change. And I'm sure that we're at such a moment again. So I just wanted to focus for this short time on one of the 6 pillars in the Global Forum, which is trust, transparency, and accountability. And I've called it AI on the wisdom path. And Tim talking about our Indigenous cultures that have been here for almost 100,000 years, and some are saying even longer, perhaps. There's no lack of wisdom or wisdom paths. We just, I think, need to get on them. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that, and also the idea of AI as a trustworthy supporter of humanity. So Tim started with some photographs and he inspired me. So this is where I am. Actually, this is literally what I'm looking at now. Only this is dawn, recent dawn here in a place called Yabra, which is, the original country of the Arakwal people and the Bunjalung Nation. So lots of wisdom here and a significant Indigenous population around this area. I mean, this area is not highly populated. It's not Sydney or Melbourne. My wife and I literally live up a dirt road where about 3 cars come a day. And for me, that's an example of the incredible growth of technology, right? And what's possible, because I'm able to now work in the world up a dirt road where no cars come. Or if a car does come past, I look out my window where I am right now and I go, who's that on my road? So technology has an amazing capacity to help. And just a little bit of background about me. Let me go back to the picture first. I'm an Australian. And when I was born into to this beautiful country, I never thought I'd leave it. And I thought I would have this just really cool middle-class upbringing and all would be well. Little did I know, like most of us, that if you want to make God laugh, tell God your plans. So over the years, I left Australia in 1977 and thought I was going away for a year, came back 22 years later, having lived in the US and with an American wife and 6 children in tow. So that wasn't part of the plan, but that happened. And on the way back, lived in China for a few years and returned. So many plans get changed. And part of my experience when I returned to Australia was to help found a crowdfunding investment fund, which at the time everyone thought, no way you can raise significant capital with crowdfunding. So $450 million later and AI in tow, we are creating a platform where people will be able to raise capital for their new businesses using all kinds of wonderful technology, which will make it simpler, faster, cheaper. So AI has many, many potential benefits. So the 3 themes I wanted to address with you today. First one, the wisdom path from materialism to consciousness. The second, AI as a trustworthy supporter intelligence plus what I'm calling grounded humanity. And Ollie spoke about that, and Tim certainly spoke about that. And 3, becoming agents of trust, crowdfunding, blockchain, and tokens of trust. So the first one, as AI on the wisdom path, I really wanted to just start with what I think is a fundamental issue, in the sense that the future of AI is not a technical problem, or it's not even a problem, a technical issue. It's a human issue. As you know, so many speakers have said, and certainly Ollie and Tim have said, it's a human issue that we need to address. And for me, that goes to what I think is a fundamental element that needs to be addressed, and I think is being addressed, but is critical. And that is, we, in the modern world, we live currently in a culture that is materialistic. By certainly the majority of people have bought into and are part of a materialistic culture, thanks to particularly the advances of science and scientific thinking. Now, that's not to say that scientific thinking is therefore wrong and bad and evil, certainly not. But we have created a culture where most people believe and experience that they are fundamentally material, and that consciousness arises from the body and the brain. And as my American friends would say, unfortunately, this is ass backwards, and that we are fundamentally consciousness experiencing what looks like a material world. And I think the Indigenous people who felt so close to nature would have no problem recognizing that they were more than just material. They are more than just material. So for me, this may seem like a philosophical issue, but actually I think it's an existential issue. That if we don't address who we truly are, we will create AI that does not represent who we truly are. We are not material. We are consciousness in activity. And I think it is crucial that we help create AI based on who we really are as humans, not who we mistakenly think we are. So, of course, that's a big issue we're not going to deal with in 30 minutes. But I think for me, this is a fundamental issue of the discussion about AI, that consciousness is primary, not material. And this will significantly change the kind of AI we will develop. We need to understand who we are. Technology is developing exponentially, but we need to actually scale our values, the kind of values that Ollie spoke of, and I've put a few in here: trust, love, and I think most importantly, interdependence. We are absolutely interdependent. We are not separate. If that's true, and if we build cultures that reflect that, then we will build AI that supports the beauty of that interdependence, not competing with each other, competing even to the extent of wars. So the kind of AI we build will be fundamentally connected to the kind of world we build internally from a human and consciousness perspective. This is a definition of wisdom that I like. It's very pragmatic in the sense, I think, the knowledge and experience of what is true or right, coupled with the capacity to act on that knowledge in service of the greatest good. All the great teachers of history, all the mystics of history have spoken about the need for service as the central activity of being human. And I think AI is an incredible gift of service if we train it right and if we develop it correctly. So for me, wisdom is a we activity, not a me activity. And again, AI is potentially a beautiful tool in that process. But it's we who must decide, are we humans going to scale the very trust and love and interdependence we need the world to reflect? So crucial, I think. And for me, I think this goes to what I think is a central element of human connection, which is trust. Now, I love Rachel Botsman's definition of trust, which is a confident relationship with the unknown. And if there's anything about AI that most people feel is it's unknown. And again, most people, if you stop them on the street and ask them about their trust for politicians, institutions, you name it, it's rapidly declining. So trust for me, which goes to the quality of the connection that we humans have and create. Only if we have the quality of relationship with each other, and that will carry on to the technology, will we be able to build a world that is reflective of the best of us, not the worst of us. And Rachel Botsman talks about 4 essential elements of trust. So in order to be trustworthy and to have people trust you, she would say, first you need integrity. What you believe and what you do what you say, right? Empathy, the capacity to put others, the life and well-being of others as primary in what you do, which reflects your authenticity. Competence, do you know what you're doing? Because it's hard for people to be competent. I love my brother, but I don't want him doing in my brain surgery. Is that person competent? And are we reliable? And I think these 4 traits of trust are a beautiful reflection. So do we have integrity? Do I act with empathy? Do I know what I'm doing? And can people see that I'm reliable? If I say I'm going to turn up, I turn up. And I think AI is incredible at 2 of these, competence and reliability. You know, I mean, as my kids would say, I'm an old guy. My grown kids still say, "Oh, Dad, you're so old." And but even I recognize, and I have, step by step grown in using AI myself. It's incredible at gifting us the capacity to increase our skills and our competence, or create a field of competence that people can rely on. And AI is incredibly reliable. I don't know about you, but I need my first cup of coffee to even be communicating with, let alone, some days I have a good day, and Friday at 3 p.m., I may not be the most approachable person in the office, for example. AI has none of those problems. It's incredibly competent and reliable. But integrity and empathy, compassion, authenticity, those are human qualities that we can actually share the skills of those qualities with AI, and AI can learn the skills, because each of those qualities actually are learnable skills, but we need to actually have them. It's we humans who must have the greatest input in how we train AI. So, and again, I'll return to the interdependence. I think it's critical to be able to trust another. We actually need to, in my opinion, in my experience, need to recognize we are not separate. We all belong together, we humans. If that's true, and I believe it is, then we need to treat each other like we're not separate, but we are belonging together, then we'll create the AI that will reflect that. AI is rapidly becoming much more intelligent than us and will be so, I believe, exponentially more intelligent than us. But it's not intelligence that will resolve the existential issues that humans are facing. The existential issues that humans are facing is our blindness to our interdependence, our inability to actually know what love looks like when someone's different, and our capacity to trust. So first, we must train ourselves to be trustworthy, and AI will support us. So often people speak about training AI. Clearly, one of the elements that is clear to me, at least in AI, is you cannot fake it. AI will recognize how we think, act, and connect, and will reflect that. So we have to first learn how to be trustworthy ourselves and help AI to reflect that. Because if you look at the way that trust is moving in the world, it's moving, let me just move to the next slide. It's moving from a time of localized trust, and some would say that we've moved into institutional trust, but I think it doesn't take too many reads of the morning paper or whatever platform you want to read, that trust across the world in institutions is rapidly falling apart. Again, just a walk down the street and ask anybody about, pick an institution and ask, how do you feel about that? And the level of trust is diving, right? But it actually doesn't need to be a hopeless element. I think what's happening is we're evolving, and these are Rachel Botsman's words, not mine, so kudos to her. We're moving to an age of distributed trust. That is the way that people build trust, and we by nature want to build trust, is distributed. Our children, our youngest is 29. And like lots of 29-year-olds, she is well and truly into every platform that it almost exists. But how does she learn to trust? How does she move confidently into the unknown? Mostly it's her friends, and most of her friends are connected digitally. So her trust actually begins with her friends and what they think. And there is a rapid moving away from trusting authority because it's authority, which has a beautiful side, which is that many of us, and many, particularly what I call the younger generation, are moving towards an authenticity of trust that has much more to do with the networks that they are building rather than just accepting authority. The downside, as we can see in the daily news, is that those who wish to maintain authority through power are more desperate to use force than to use trustworthiness. So trust is a critical element, I believe, in how we will move forward with AI. And I just wanted to use what I think are just some pragmatic examples of how this might go. Because I think first, we humans need to become agents of trust. But there are already tools in play that can, I think, give us a glimpse of the possibilities. So as I said, when I first returned back to Australia in 2000, after a few years, I was in the founding team of a crowdfunding investment platform. And when we started, people thought, oh, that's very cute. So you're raising capital for your latest CD back in the day when CDs existed, right? And that's what, crowdfunding was seen as, the small amounts of money to help with this or that. But we were actually raising capital with the crowd to build housing developments and to support the funding of startup businesses. And again, when we started, people thought this is just a silly idea. This is not going to work. It's working, right? So $450 million later, this business is funding now hundreds of new businesses, and the founders of new businesses can now increasingly go to that platform. And of course, now many others are growing. And the process of raising capital for a new business within the law and within the framework set up to protect investors, and in Australia that's called ASIC, within those frameworks and completely aligned with the law, those businesses can raise capital, and investors can trust that that capital aligns with the regulations and the laws, and those founders and investors are protected to the extent that the law and regulations can. And AI is moving that from something that can take weeks and lots of lawyers and lots of money to something that can happen in days at a fraction of the price. And this is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. So for me, it's a great example of where AI can really support businesses and organizations and so many elements of what we're doing. So I have the view that actually one of the most important agents of change in the world as it develops is going to move away from what we see as the institutions of governments, politics, across all nations towards business. Because one of the elements that business has is that everybody is looking to find a way to support themselves, to support their families. And institutions would appear to become less and less trustworthy. So I think that business can play a role, incredible role, in helping transform the way that we live. So in businesses, we have, again, in my direct experience now, more and more founders who used to have to go to billion-dollar investment houses and essentially beg for money to get their business started, and would be, if they were lucky, would receive funding and capital at a great cost to them and the potential equity that they could hold. Crowdfunding now is opening up the possibility that these founders no longer need to use those big institutions, including banks, and can go directly to the crowd to fund what they're doing. And the crowd can directly then investigate the trustworthiness of this business for them to place their money. I think, and it's already happening, that more and more people will drift away or move away from institutions, particularly investment institutions that may or may not represent their best interests, and move to a different way of raising capital, which is with the crowd, distributed trust. So for me, this is an area where I think incredible changes can happen, supported by AI. So for me, funding a business is already moving away from what I think is a broken capital investment market towards crowdfunding, and therefore scaling trust. Because crowdfunding, again, done legally and properly within the bounds of legal protections for investors, is a way that those investors can decide, A, is this business trustworthy enough for me to invest in? And B, is this business something I want to buy from? The capacity to act based on trust is growing rapidly, I think. So all businesses know, I think, that trust is a central determinant of their business success, that these teams and businesses can learn and establish patterns of trust, and that AI is the master of pattern recognition and can actually support the scaling of trust within teams, within businesses, within markets, within economies, and beyond. So I have a great hope that business can be a stimulant and catalyst for change for the better. So to sum up, before we get into our discussion, I think wisdom is a critical part of the growth of AI and how we will implement it. Compassion, for me, is part of wisdom, comes from what I would call the wisdom within every person, therefore the wisdom within every culture, the wisdom within every country and the world. From that wisdom within, I really, my experience is we must focus on recognizing who we are as humans, what is the essence of our wisdom, and from there we can fashion AI that will support the growth of a wiser world. So thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. And I think we're now going to get into discussion, yeah?
Yes, yes.
Cool.
So Ian, I believe you're starting
I am. Just
first.
bear with me. I've got a slight tech issue here. Or as my children would say, I am the slight tech.
They always find the right words, don't they?
Yeah, so to begin our discussion, Tim, first of all, I really appreciated what you had to say. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I can't wait to get onto your site and see what the possibilities are, since I've got 3 kids who are creatives, and one of whom's a singer and loves to produce her own songs and music. And so I'm going to look at that site and see the possibilities. That would be great. I think.
Can I just add? Oh, sorry for interruption.
No.
Can I just add? I know your kids are in Melbourne, in various places, and they're into arts. Tim's got actually maybe you can tell Ian and the audience that you have an exhibition at the Flagstaff.
I do actually. Whether I can jump. It's a permanent public art installation of 350 square meters. I have no idea what that is in feet. Hey Siri, how much is 358 square meters in feet? There you go, 1,100 feet of Indigenous art, and yeah, in Melbourne. Thank you.
Wow.
We'll definitely visit that. That's on my list.
Yeah, where is that, Tim? Where is it?
Near Flagstaff Gardens, right in the city of beautiful Melbourne, which is the Wurundjeri country.
Beautiful. And I can remember walking across the Flagstaff Gardens to take my university exams way back when in I won't say what it was.
Well, that's not way back, because about 300 years ago, that was hugely dynamic waterfalls, and it was all about land management and different levels. And so, each season would have a different way that the water would move. So you're it's on the evolution scale, not ancient.
Thank you. Tim, here's a question I wrote down earlier, because as I was listening to you, and then when I listened to you, I wrote it actually down when I was looking at your slides. And when I listened to you, it came to me more, right? But can you give me an example, or give us an example, of how ancient technology and modern technology has been used in Indigenous culture in Australia, and how you think that can develop? Yep.
Great. So I actually have something. That's a picture I didn't show you guys that might help. So one thing I love about Indigenous technology is always absolutely about function. So its look is literally a result of its function. And if you can see there on the right, you've got this spear here, which is a terrible image. I apologize. and it was done with wax and hair, and it was the part that hooks on a spear there. This spear hooked onto what's called a woomera and would be used to throw the thing. Now, one thing that I was fascinated with, you take that forwards, to now. I remember a friend of mine was at Warman, which is the Kimberley, which is some of those beautiful images we saw earlier. And I don't know if you know, but when cell phones came out in the 90s, they had cameras in them. I mean, what on earth? How ridiculous! Why would you want a camera on a cell phone? How ridiculous! And so the first thing that these kids and adults did when flip phones went into the community up there is that what did they do? They made collages of shark dreaming. So going back thousands of years, another example is the Macassans traded horns from a type of whale, and in our culture we associated stories with that to say, hey, that's the rainbow serpent, which is a mythological representation of different knowledge structures, and so that was used to carry things and transport things, and then it was incorporated into ceremony. So I guess to answer your question, technology has never really been seen as a thing that's on itself, but something we use it for to do things that matter, whether that's custodial information, responsibility, function. So we've seen echoes of that going back tens of thousands of years. And so I guess I'm really excited to where one that could lead for Indigenous people and where that might influence what other people can do with technology.
Cool.
Love that you guys love the functionality and things like that, because me and my husband, just a little bit of a personal story. My husband and I are obviously very different. It wouldn't be good to be with the same type of person anyway. So me and my family would grow things that we can eat. We don't, like, I personally don't grow flowers. I love flowers in the kitchen or in the house and stuff, but I wouldn't personally grow them. But I will grow herbs. I will grow tomatoes and things like that, where he would absolutely not grow that. He wants the house to look immaculate and polished, and where I'm all about functionality. So it just shows we have a lot of similarities, certainly.
I love that, and that's very strong on themes of land management. So a lot of our stories are about how we look after the land, and then therefore the land looks after us. And I mentioned before with the different layers of land is Melbourne, for example. We have 8 seasons there. Sydney has 6, Western Australian has 5 to 7, Northern Territory has 5, and different areas have a division of that. And so now people are recognising climate change, and a lot of these Indigenous structures are quite reflective of land management. And so I love that, what you're saying about your land management.
Yeah, interesting. I came across the term songlines. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, actually, that's a great segue. So songlines, the best way to understand those is, let me do this. Think of them as libraries. This is just some more Aboriginal art, but while you've asked about that, I may as well just talk a little bit about that. So think of songlines as libraries that go back tens of thousands of years. And so when my non-Indigenous mother met my father for the first time, my father was quite an influential, he's still around. He was the first Aboriginal Socceroo. He had our Aboriginal flag, on his request. It was a design for our people. But when he brought my mother to a tribal environment for the first time, one, they didn't even recognize it, hey, you're different colored skin, which I always think is a beautiful thing. But the first thing that happened was, where are you from? What's your background? Where's your family from? And so you can see these are different artists from around Australia, and I've got their titles under there, and there's many, many more. Songlines are a mechanism to preserve things like responsibility and functionality and roles. And we spoke about functionality being the purpose of stuff. Every Indigenous story wasn't about a look. It might look a particular way, but there was a very deeply important functionality behind that. And so when my mother answered, I'm from Tasmania, the first thing was, okay, yeah, that means my story's here, your story's there, and those songlines connect. So never in close to 100,000 years have we detected through fossils and remains a single case of genetic inbreeding. So encoded into these songlines are a set of instructions. And I guess how can we learn from this as a governance structure? How can that influence policy? How can AI take a page out of that songlines book? So yeah, thank you. It's a great question.
Wow, absolutely amazing. That's a lot more than I thought. You know, when you hear songlines, you think it's connected to a song, or is it just me? But it's actually completely something different, which is amazing.
But actually, Olivia, you are correct. Image is one part, but like I said, all of our culture that is oral tradition, so we don't write it down. We remember that. We've genetically attuned our minds to be very, very synchronized with an oral tradition. Now, part of that was sound. So, like I said, the didgeridoo had incredible amount of information in its artistry and its inflections of information. Same as the art. So I talked about Emily earlier, how she started to paint, didn't even learn how to paint. I've got to get my stories out, you know, my songlines. So she frantically would paint, you know, after she'd finished a canvas, throw it out, next one, you know. It didn't matter, you know, if you go and look at the National Museum in Canberra, if you know exactly where to look, you can see paw prints of the camp dogs that are on some of those paintings. You know, this was all about getting your songlines out. And so, yeah, very, very beautiful works from that, Emily.
Mm.
Beautiful. I think we have a question from
We have
from
a question for Tim.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah. I'll read it out to you, Tim. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, that's awesome.
It's from Cecilia. Thanks, Cecilia. Would you say this relates to, wow, biogenealogy as a more modern frame of thinking, the where being a large part of who we are? Does that?
Cecilia, that is a wonderfully beautiful question, and absolutely. So again, I'll just use some of this art as an example, or so I shouldn't use the word art, some of these stories as an example. Every Indigenous story that's handed down, whether it's your image, so just going back a sec to answer your question, Cecilia, all of our culture is represented through image, music, or dance movement. So if we talk about one of those stories that is recognized by those things, that is absolutely about where it is geographically, but also what is the role of that story. And they're always mechanisms of how we look after the land. You know, the cicadas that have breeding season, they are every 1, 5, 11, 28, 35, and then onwards seasons. And that's recorded in this information, but as well as, you know, your area. So we, to further answer, I'm probably completely not answering your question, I apologize, but we are also divided into water groups. So we've got family is based on, hey, I'm the saltwater person, I'm a saltwater person from Northern Territory. We've got fresh water, we've got brackish water, but we also have sweet water, which describes mountains and that kind of temperate. So I guess when we talk about my story, like the first thing I did is say, this is where I'm from. So my identity, my responsibility, all that stuff comes from where.
Can I just continue on that, Tim, just because it brings up a lot for me, is so how do you see AI assisting that and helping with that, and the other way around, that assisting AI? How does that work, do you think?
Yeah, I love that question. And so at the moment we're seeing, we have seen the first version of AI, which is so damn impressive, being the engineers going, look what we can do, you know, and it was led by engineers, possibly led by money, but not possibly by people, or a little bit on function. So if we take that shift to be about what people do with AI, we have less homogenized data and more siloed. So, you know, AI is only as unique as the data sets and the people that create it. So we have a few competitors, and some of their music just sounds so incredible. But when you start to create more than one song, they start to sound very similar. And that's a great thing. They sound really, really beautiful, a very very sophisticated technology. I would like to start a conversation where how can we recognize language groups or really unique outliers or cultural stuff where there is a shared large data pool, but also a siloed data pool. So that again mimics Songline. So, you know, my story, I can talk about a shared story, which want to be part of that data set, but how can I have safeguarded my data as a unique silo that I can govern? And so I guess if we could have AI policies mimicking that Indigenous custodial respect, I think we could bring up the trust and inclusivity and divergency, all those things just like that.
Are you hopeful about that, Tim?
I think that in order for people to actually trust AI and know that, oh, hang on, for example, music. So there's no secret, I absolutely love John Williams, the composer of Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and you know, he spent 7 decades in a room composing so we can have this beautiful hot wire to emotion through 4 instruments, and we can bring us to tears. Now, you don't say, right, Tim, I want you to compose me a piece of music, but please delete from your memory anything you've heard with John Williams. We don't do that. But at the moment, we're coming into this question of artists are having their works influencing these large data models, musicians, visual artists. And so the thinking is, well, how, if I opt in to have my data influence these models, which is going to make the models better, how can I opt out? We currently can't untangle because we don't quite know on the, an auto-regressive, transformer-based neural network, how exactly the pathway is. So we might get to that point, but we don't say that, right, I want you to compose the music, but delete half your brain. So maybe we need to have a different way of thinking about people and humanity. And if there is that level of trust, I think we could mimic ourselves in the structure, and then policy is an entirely different discussion on that. But I don't think policy is something that can really, influence it after a certain degree. I think we have to be doing that. Again, I completely probably missed the point of your question.
No, you didn't. Let me just follow up with one other, if I may. Right, you mentioned in your presentation about closing the gap, right?
Yep.
So what did you mean by that in relation to AI?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that we have a huge imbalance. When the British landed in Australia, they looked around and didn't count Aboriginals as living people who were classified as terra nullius, which means plants. And so we were pretty much 90-something% of us was wiped out by the common cold, and then some other horrific historical things. And it's not unique to Australia. This happened, all over the world in many different guises over many millennia. But where was I going with this? So what that's caused is a huge gap between non-Indigenous and Indigenous people. And that usually relates to things like, medical or education gaps. And so governments tried to catch up with policy on life expectancy, things like that. How can we close that gap between, a big life expectancy and then a tiny life expectancy with Indigenous, incarceration rates, and all trying to be positive about this stuff, but there's a hugely disproportionate amount of Indigenous people that take up the, corrective services area. And so how can we close that gap? And I think if I relate that to compassion and AI particularly, there are many ways that we can forward our own expression from a humanity perspective and share that with other beautiful cultures around the world. But that's closing the gap, means how can we get our disposition closer and less of an impact.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, Tim, a question. I wrote it down. What is environmental intelligence? So can you give me an example of how a learning environment could benefit from AI, and how compassion would be the key to unlocking potential?
Yep. Okay. So I remember I told that story before about me having privilege with music, but what do these other kids have except incredible talent and spatial awareness? that relates to that spatial awareness. So I noticed fairly early on that I really struggle in a classroom, just like you saw how much I possibly you saw how much I struggled presenting without having these dynamics. And now that I've got you people here and you know, relating back to a physical location, parts of my mind as activated, like 10 coffees, for example. And so translating that to environmental intelligence in the old way, which is what we call prior settlement or you know, traditional tribal structures, we would be moving around, we'd be walking around. So our sense of perspective and proportion with objects, you know, I showed you some of that imagery, my relation to where I'm standing, time of day, all those objects are in flux, which completely stimulates and activates parts of intelligence. And so an example of that was we're building a foundation. So my dad was the first international soccer player, Aboriginal soccer player for Australia. And where was I going with this? That's right. And our family created a foundation. How can we get other kids learning? And you know, how can we mix sport, moving around, with learning? And one of the things I identified was that if I'm walking around, that's why, you know, I do literally 27,000 steps a day because I walk around on the phone like a crazy person. And it isn't just because I need to fidget, it's because my environment needs to have a level of movement to it, which stimulates part of my cognitive profile. And so I then translated this, how can we have this with these littlies that we're trying to throw this information on them, make them learn stuff in school. So, you know, I invented a thing called walking classrooms. So let's all walk together as we're learning. And suddenly, instead of fidgeting, you're walking, the retention rates went straight off the scales, incredible retention. People are more involved, people feel more connected. So that's the level of how environmental intelligence, you know, we impacted that with programming. And I guess with AI and compassion, I think there are many, many other things that we can learn about, you know, many cultures around the world. It's not just Indigenous that need to move around like that. And how can we have systems like AI means that we could learn in these different learning structures. We could support creating as well as learning. And that's, I think there's a huge, huge role and opportunity that AI could have with that.
Absolutely. And I love the walking part because it does unlock ideas regardless who you are. You know, we were encouraged also, you know, even during COVID when we were working from home, go out for a walk. Not that you'll only refresh, but you will get great ideas. And when you get back to your desk, you know, continue. So yeah, absolutely. That's
Cool. There's a question coming on the chat. So are you two okay if we go over to that question?
okay.
Please, yeah.
I love the discussion and insights. A question that might be interesting to explore, the Wall Street effect and the focus on short-term profits. How to consider balancing profits with broader outcomes when we look at leveraging AI, when drivers for a lot of organizations as a generalization remain almost exclusively a sole profit focus. Appreciating there's talk around other factors, but often that plays out as a theatre. Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And I think I can cover a little bit of that through my maybe questions as well with the organization. So if you guys want to add anything, do you guys want to add anything to this? It would be helpful.
After you, Olivia.
I was thinking of covering through my conversation the answers that I will have later on.
Cool. Sorry. Can I jump in? Are you okay?
Maybe if you want to read it, makes more sense if you read it.
Yeah. So, but just going to what you just read out, Olivia, from Ed, right, about the profit being the center. I think, you know, that saying, I don't know if it's just an Australian saying, but you know, if, the idea that if you've got a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So I'm agreeing, and so for me, trust is my hammer, right? So I'm agreeing with Ed, right, in the sense that you know, at the moment, culturally, Western culture at least, you know, profitability is seen as, many companies will call profitability the bottom line, right? And I think A, that's changing, and B, it's not the bottom line. Actually, trust is, right? So I think over time, as trust becomes more distributed, then businesses will begin to have to redefine what is their bottom line to not just profitability. There's already been movement in that area to sustainability and ecological impact. So it's not a new idea, but I think AI can be again a great service in helping recognize the let me go back one step and say many organizations have a poor lack of trust. They have an incredible lack of trust built into their culture. So most people don't or can't turn up as who they really are. Disengagement is profoundly, 80% in the States, 80% of employees are disengaged, right? So that does not lead to profitability. That leads to great cost and breakdown. So I think AI that recognizes patterns incredibly well, better than us, will begin to highlight the broken pattern or the breakage of trust and the connection to profitability. So I think, thanks, Ed, for that question. I think it really points to a change that AI can support. That's my hammer on the nail answer.
You nailed it. Nailed it, that one. Can I apologize? I didn't realize my screen was up there sharing. Can I just add to that from a cultural wisdom perspective, that part of the problem with closing the gap that was because we weren't able to represent ourselves financially, our currency wasn't finance, was story. And now that that story wasn't just about a pretty nice little thing, it was literally the science was embedded in story. That storytelling was our currency. And so we, even as an artist, my identity for a long time was, I'm kind of being an artist. What's the point? You've got lawyers, you've got unique types of incredible people doing finance and doctors, but really an artist, is that really? Then I realized watching the news that you go through the runs, the movements, and then there'd be something on a musician or an artist, and everything would light up. It would be about purpose, and suddenly it'd be like, oh, this is why we're doing stuff. So I've experienced an incredible shift, and a lot of my work's been on architectural influence. And I want to talk a little side rabbit, but I think it relates to this. When traditional way of living would be a camp, people, live in a camp. So in the center, you would have a big central fireplace where different families would all be at different positions around the camp. And there were certain rules, like you wouldn't look you would be positioned. The geometry would be as a result of these rules. For example, you wouldn't look your mother-in-law in the eye. I mean, it sounds funny, but it's actually quite true that there were certain rules put in place. That's the inner layer. Now, the layer outside of that would be individual family camps where you could intermingle. And again, you would have your own cooking and preparing and storytelling. At the end of the day, you would reflect on news. And then that's the second layer. And the layer outside of that is individual sleeping parts where you might have your own cooking thing again. Now, when I started to see that, to answer your finance question, that there was just this guilt towards Indigenous culture. So say 15 years ago, it's like, we have to do some Aboriginal art here, but it's just a thing. Stick it on a wall, make it a mural. But then embedding this kind of wisdom into finance and into business and architecture, it's now winning tenders all around the world. So I would literally translate some of these principles, such as the nexus type living. And instead of having the central location here going out horizontally, let's do it vertically in a skyscraper. Let's have the lobby and the central place in the middle. The outer parts, again, where individual companies can have their mingling stuff. Again, individual spaces, straight away, 10-to-1 awards all around the world. And this kind of wisdom is being replicated. So I guess I encourage people to think about how can this be influencing AI and finance, not just money driving things, but the wisdom and principles behind things. And I guess, thank you, Ed, you inspired that level of thinking.
Your turn, Ollie.
To answer. Oh, okay. Oh, that's all right. So yeah, to drive any any change, I guess I think we covered a lot of topics, and we need to be really careful that we craft it properly, because this is where we actually, by adding value and by having our input, we actually create the AI that will involve humanity, not just the profits. And I think another key aspect of it is the organizations will have to repurpose themselves. It's not going to be, okay, I have a number of employees and they come to work and do certain things, and it's not going to be business as usual. Organizations will start to transform from asking themselves questions. What is it we're trying to do? How can we get there faster? And how are we going to do it? So, let's say if my massive transformative purpose is to, enable AI, enable people with AI and help them in this work environment, help them thrive, I should say, help them thrive in this new AI-enabled business environment. What is it that I need to do and how I'm going to do it? Because your organization can't run traditionally anymore, and you won't be able to achieve commercial objectives by doing the things this way. So even your AI that you introduce, we've seen 85% of projects fail, basically, and this was stated by the MIT recent report. They said 85% of AI projects fail, and the reason for that is because they don't have these organizations don't have fundamentals in place. It's not enough to set the financial goals. It starts off with the data, starts off with the people, and then you start looking at technology and how that can enable you. So really, they need to start thinking differently, and then the commercials will show as a result.
Cool. Thanks, Ed, for your question. Maybe
Thank
Ollie,
you.
maybe Ollie, I could ask you a couple of questions
Yeah, sure.
in relation to your presentation. And of course, actually, I had.
Yeah. I've got a few questions for you as well.
Okay, you go, Tim. You go.
Oh, no. Okay. What do we need to have in place to ensure that our AI projects will succeed?
Okay, so I mentioned one of them, which is really about, having actually before the data, before that, it's all about, understanding where are we as an organization, what do we lack, what are our problems. So understanding that first step, where we are, and then building, okay, where is our data? How good is our data? Does AI have enough data to train on? Where's this data processed? All of these are important components. Is the data organized the right way? Because we know that if you don't have good data, whatever input you provide, it's going to give you an output that you're not looking for. So this is the first step in this AI journey. The second step is the people, or sort of, you do this in parallel. So the people are super important. How do we enable our people to be able to work with AI? They understand AI. So when you introduce the AI tool, they can start working with it. Yes, we're not all fluent and don't know how to work with it, but we're better off starting to work with it and play with it, because as I mentioned earlier, AI is not something that you bring in. It's almost like a baby. You bring it in and you feed it and you make it sleep, and then it's a process. So, and it grows. So it grows to how you're trying to raise it. So it has those environmental effects or input effects. And then as an organization, you've got to look at, okay, what are our problems? What are we trying to solve? How can we go about this? And, we can see sometimes potentially a lot of problems. I mean, a lot of areas where we can use or leverage AI to help us whether it's some efficiencies in the business, is it, automations like processing invoices and, things like that are, or even with customer experience team and so on. So we can see a lot of those problems, but what I think is important to understand is bring things down. We can't solve everything at once. Look for a problem first that is small enough that you can train, that you can test, that you can see return on investment. That can you get your team involved and get them involved early. So as they're playing with those tools and you see some, positives out of these tools, everyone will get excited. The people that are involved, they say, oh, I know, I did this is great. And then that empowers people to add, feed, if you like, AI with the good things. And that's where we want to be. I think this is a sort of great process because the change management is super important. And as I mentioned, there are various reports out there and leaders speak about this a lot, about, their projects fail. Mostly, apparently, it's 90% due to people. So so we have a lot of work to do in this space. I think, is there anything else? Yeah, the other thing maybe I want to mention why with the AI projects and succeeding of AI projects in the organization is what leaders of enterprises. So you have obviously smaller to medium-sized businesses and large businesses who can deploy various AI solutions. Now, if you're a smaller business, there are more affordable tools that you can use and refine fit for purpose. But if you're in an enterprise, you really need to think about building an AI strategy. And why I say that is I know AI changes so quite a lot and quite fast, but if we have an AI strategy of how our organization needs to evolve, we're actually setting ourselves for success in a way where we know that we need to engage certain tools because, as we know at the moment, we have great narrow AI that does one thing really, really well. Now, you can't have one narrow AI deal with everything else in the business. So what we need to work towards is building those AI agents or blocks that can potentially talk to each other. First, the AI needs to talk to your existing platforms and the systems that you have in your legacy systems at the moment. And then that needs to evolve block by block into AI agents that will talk to each other. And then what we're going to be seeing is an AI, like an agentic with agentic capabilities that will manage the rest of the AIs. Obviously, with the human in the loop. All parts will have humans in the loop. And that's why that training that I mentioned earlier is super critical and super important. And if you haven't started, please start now. Then what that will allow us to do, which we covered earlier, is it will give us transparency about everything that's happening in our business. So if you're the CEO, if you're the owner of the business, you don't have to wait for that monthly report that gets created, that you sometimes skew information to make it look better and so on. So basically it's full transparency. And then if you have deployed AIs that have that transparency factor in it, and AI will hallucinate from time to time. We as humans also, are not perfect at all times. So what this enables you to do, your whole team, is actually look into the AI and see where is it hallucinating, where is it not making, giving us the right outputs or decisions, and you're able to fix that. You're able to work with that AI. And that's why we have emergence of these new AI roles that can actually do that. So I think if we look at, the introduction, if we're serious about being successful in that AI journey, in incorporating AI solutions, I would say this would be the way to go.
Can I just add a perspective shift, going back a bit, that those beautiful things you're saying about agents and working in blocks. That, like I mentioned, I was privileged to be part of this discussion think tank that's forming the national AI policy, which literally has to be approved by the Senate by the end of the year, which possibly means delays. But a lot of stuff we're talking about is that other countries might have way more competitive advantage because they're not sticking to things like copyright. And when I'm thinking of your different parts talking to different parts, the term that came up a lot was interoperability. And so we can try and govern these things, or we can literally create our own systems that interact in the way that we want to interact. How do you think that we can pave a way, make way for a more compassion, more respect, without losing competitive edge to people that are going to scrape data at any means necessary? And, do you think there's a relationship between that macro and the micro?
When it comes to scraping data, that's another issue. I think probably government level, they need to look at that. When it comes to building your AI solutions, whether you're working with a vendor or with a tech provider, obviously you've got to look for certain things and that they have security and all these other things, frameworks incorporated and into their base platform. Sometimes, or a lot of times, they will have already some solutions that they have created that you can incorporate into your business. But the beautiful thing about it today is we actually don't have to buy a ready product anymore as an organization. Think of it. Previously, you would have to go and buy, I don't know, let's say it's a Salesforce product or any other SaaS product. And then you may, as an organization, buy it. And maybe you only need certain features, but then the others you're not going to use because it doesn't apply to you. The beautiful thing now in the AI space is actually you can have fit for purpose product that, whether your vendor will refine a product that they already have, but you and your people with the input will actually build the AI that is fit for you. It's almost like cloning, So if we wanted to clone, something, it's actually fit for purpose. And then the way these enterprise platforms are organized is your information is sitting within that network. So it doesn't get scraped around by anybody else. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I think I forgot to mention during my presentation, which is really an important point, was about the data. So if I'm an employee working for you, and now you have obviously various data that you want to have shared, and I want to use ChatGPT to help me out with something, I come in and dump the data into ChatGPT, say goodbye to that, this is not what we should be doing. So we should be actually being mindful of not pushing this sensitive data, because I believe there are going to be some fines in this area. Obviously, each country will deal with it differently, but I think that's something really worth mentioning. People should not do.
Yeah, I'm also conscious, Ian, I butted in before. When I think you're about to ask a question, I apologize for that.
No problem. Ollie, I think you might have answered part of this question already, but just to double check, because this is your space, you're working with organizations, right? And they're confronted with all kinds of tools now. They're everywhere, right? And only more to come.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you advise those organizations to do in relation to, evaluating which one to choose? What's best for them?
It's become really hard, I think, because there's so much information out there. So who has hours and days to sort of explore, because you really need to deep dive. But before you actually deep dive looking for AI solutions, you need to actually understand what you're looking for. What are we looking for? So if I was a leader, I would look for vendors who have been already in the business for a little while. I think I would be looking for vendors who have some connections to the US, because it seems like the US is much more forward we must agree here in Australia, they're much more forward. I think we need to drive that a little bit harder and make a change here, but learn from their experiences. Because they had, like, for example, technology company I'm working with is they've been in the business for just over 10 years. So there are a lot of learnings in that space. So look for these type of companies who work in particular, I would say, with information sensitive companies such as financial companies that you can work with, because you know that these companies have already gone through all the necessary checks and you feel that you can have your data safe, if you like. So you're able to also, they're able to create solutions for enterprise level. So I think I would look for that. I would look for transparency using AI tools within the business that are transparent, that you can always adjust and tweak. I would look for so explainability and transparency. I mentioned ethics and compliance, super important. So also companies need to write policies around, what can AI do, what it can't do, what their people can do, and what they can't do, referring to an example I just provided. So, people need to know that they can't just dump information into any other AI tools and just push it out there. So I guess, the fit, the trust as well, and the long-term value, meaning we want to be able to also look at companies that can scale, so from building one block to scale to, second block and so on, where sometimes organizations make mistakes of, implementing random tools that cannot talk to each other. And what happened was, you spend 6 months or 1 year training this AI tool. All of a sudden you realize, okay, we cannot scale. That's going to be a big problem. Absolutely. So I'd say something, that would be probably.
You've just what you said earlier, Ollie, about identifying what the problem is and going for that. And I just note that there's a really wonderful parallel, that there's no information out there on music or anything like that. It's like, if you know a few things, what are the things you don't know that you don't know? So I guess, again, talking about my platform, Jalili, we want to create a safe haven, a place where we want users to go out and not say, hey, this is good or this is bad, but what are they trying to achieve with their objectives, and then rating that. How do we think that their beautiful objective, how are they scaling it on that? How well are they achieving their objective? So that's what our music environment, which we anticipate launching in the next few weeks, will be a place where that can be a go-to place for music. So hopefully there's other industries that we can find, a safe space that is a way that we can holistically understand, think objectively, have your own say. So, I mean, I guess, it's an interesting space. Is it more democratic? Is it less democratic? So I love what you were saying about that. Thank you.
That's okay. You're welcome. Ian, should I ask you a question?
You can, except I've got one more for you, if I may.
Okay, then we'll leave it.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
because I think you've covered so much again, right? But I think, because I love talking to people like you who have taken a deep dive into AI, because I think I swim in the shallows. That's another story. But just in the most essential sense, what's the greatest value you think AI brings to let's stick with business for now, or organization? What's the greatest value it brings?
I think we have another question. Okay, I'll leave the question. The greatest value, I think, it gives us time. If I could really summarize it in one word, I would say it gives us time. So if we build AI in for the good of the world, we can benefit in so many ways. And that not only elevates us as humans, it elevates the businesses and whatever achievements, financial goals they have that they can reach. I would say, yeah, and as we grow and learn through AI, I think it just elevates our humanity as well. So I would say really the time. I wouldn't go into the tasks, drill down the tasks and drill down to potential roles and things like that. I think it's really like we as humans, we're supposed to, like Tim says, go out for a walk. We're supposed to go do our hobbies and, interact with people. So I would say this is actually the enabler, if we use it correctly, that allows us to be ourselves and enjoy our time more. And yeah, I would say that would be probably the one for me.
Can I respond to Ed's question and your perspective there, Olivia, that 97% of Indigenous time in the old way was spent on these types of endeavors? What are we doing? What's the stars, the sky stories, traveling, keeping things in balance? And 3% of at that time was spent on, I guess, what we coin finance, like mechanical, tactical things. Where do I sleep, food, trade, stuff like that. And so nowadays I see that we've shifted that paradigm, that 3% is in those wonderful endeavors, and 97% is a slave to our mortgage. Yay, that's fun. So I guess responding to your question, Ed, I'm think in this era now, what could never have been done, with huge advertising agencies, budgets, creating content, mobilizing coding, access, now a lot of that heavy lifting can be done by technology and AI. And I would say that we do have an advantage with these big organizations that have to, we can be agile. So I think there is a flip side to that discussion point, the big centralized power, leading the way. But I think there's a real beautiful opportunity to do stuff that other people could never do before. We couldn't even get on the playing field.
Yeah, and I'm going to furiously agree with you, Tim, in the sense that I think it seems to me that AI opens the door for smaller businesses to form. And but so many of the resources that used to only be available to large organizations now can be accessed by small founders and smaller organizations who are actually much more agile and efficient and effective than large organizations. So I think it's, opening the door in a way that, and I think Ed's brought it's such a good point, Ed, and thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to add with the small, medium-sized businesses, I mean, it's great that they have access to AI solutions. And if we look at some use cases, like let's say, I don't know, you're a vet and you're employing a receptionist who's helping you and she can't answer all the calls. And, like you can't take calls 24/7 because, imagine, let's say, I'm a dog owner and I'm calling somebody to, can I book an appointment for a vet to actually see my dog? I have to wait till the morning, or I have to leave a message and nobody gets back and so on. So this is a great opportunity where you can engage, like smaller, medium-sized businesses can engage, 24/7 agents like receptionists that actually can behave the way you want them to behave in a standardized professional way, so you don't get to miss any calls. So, even during the day, I'm not talking just after hours, but I'm also talking about, look, if I was the pet owner and have a pet, I can talk to the agent at nighttime and have a booking already. And I know I have peace of mind before that tomorrow morning at 9:30, I'll be able to visit a vet and check my dog. Now, what that also allows them to do is like not to miss a call, because imagine if one of these calls is average appointment could be $100. Imagine missing 5 of those calls per day. What does that mean for the business? So, and then you multiply it. So you can all of a sudden now you have a beautiful opportunity to help, have your receptionist work with you to help you manage your other work rather than answering those calls. And then with that comes transparency and the rest of the things. So, and I personally, I built my own agent as well, which sits on my website. So to give you an example, I didn't have to do any coding. It's a simple one where it answers my calls. It will tell you, okay, so what do you offer? What about AI? Whatever questions you have about AI. And then it will basically ask you, it will trigger you to say, oh, would you like to book an appointment or discovery call with our team? So it will encourage you to do something. And then basically the agent sends a calendar link to your mobile phone as an SMS, and you can pick a time or you can send it to your email if you like. And you did not touch anything, but you have a full transparency of the call. You have the sentiment. So if somebody is also, if you feel like somebody might be a little bit angry or something, that call can notify you and you're able to act upon these sort of things right away rather than wait before maybe it was a little thing, but then they might make it into a bigger issue and then start rating your business in a bad way before you can come. So these are the really great opportunities that exist for smaller to medium-sized businesses. Yeah.
Can I just parallel that? And I don't want to leave lots of time. We've got a lot of questions for you, Ian. But just going back, and it just made me think. We've got here's another little gem here. So I said that my dad had the Australian Aboriginal flag designed, which is this, and it's the black people, which actually now should be all people, on the red land, because as you saw from some of that art, that's the signature of our company, and the yellow represents the horizon, where we're going to. And I think to answer your point, Ed, about all these things are now, like Ollie, you said, I can now focus on this other. We can actually strategically realign and be agile and think, hey, where are we going strategically? And John McGrath, a very wealthy, or to say famous property developer, had a book a while ago called You Inc. And he talked about life being like a hand. And you've got your finances, you've got your family, you've got your career, you've got your health, and something else which I can't remember what it was. And you say, all right, people think to themselves, okay, I'm focusing on my business and things like that, but my relationships, my personal intimate relationships, they are terrible at the moment. And you say to yourself, oh, I've got all these other areas, but the truth is, when you stab one finger, you are all you can do is focus on the pain. You can't see those other things. And so I'd parallel that to closing the gap with Indigenous people. We are so focused on a lot of pain and things that we can't better ourselves to do a certain direction of things. And I would parallel that to business, that once we have all these smaller processes that we suddenly don't have to be focused on, we suddenly, oh wow, I can focus on where I'm going. And I think that we can mimic those larger, the agility. So we can match the agility, not mimic, match the agility that these huge multinational firms have, because we have all that beautiful support structures in place. So that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Ollie, can I ask you one more question? Yeah, how do we ensure, we've talked a lot about trust and ethics, and how do we make sure that AI stuff that is out there is aligned with what we might have as policy or individual or our own brand values? How do we know that software or AI or these processes is aligned with what we're doing?
I think it starts with leadership in the organization. I think they need to put that together, and obviously everybody in the organization needs to be on the same page before you go out looking for any AI tools, because it's like, okay, this is our value. We need to stand by this, and this is now we need to. Then the second step is about looking at AI solutions, looking at AI vendors, looking at what are their values, looking at their capability, their scalability, and all of those things that we mentioned. So it's really starts off first with the leaders in the organization. I think that would be the first step.
Mm.
I'm not sure if there's any other questions around that, or it needs a bit more clarification.
Would that look like a manifest or a brand guideline or some kind of
Absolutely. It has to be legal, and all the employees need to know why. I think that needs to be explained. So there needs to be a why. There needs to be a why. There needs to be, a point of, learning and upskilling, involving everybody in the organizations, and I think, celebrating wins as we go and so on. So it has to be a formal document where everybody's on the same page. I think organizations need to relook at how they operate these days. We did mention, previous, like obviously prior COVID or just after COVID, and now businesses are changing rapidly. Previously, businesses used to have, let's say, I used to buy a lot of properties, a lot of things. Now it's about leveraging what you have. How can we leverage what we have, amplify with AI and the people, and get the results? So it's a much faster race. So I would say we're almost like getting to a sprint rather than, previously, like, okay, maybe we're doing a, 10-kilometer run, at a certain pace. Now we need to think about how do we speed up? How do we, but you got to go from a good base. It's like building a house. Let's build a good base and let's, build the walls before we put the windows. So then we will see that transformation in the business in a sustainable way, as I was mentioning before.
Mm.
Well, I'm conscious that we've should it be Ian?
I think we need to ask Ian some questions.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Ian, a question. Like I said, I wrote my questions down. Why do you place the issue of materialism and consciousness so significantly in the discussion of AI?
Yeah, I think the main reason for me is that I think it is the most existential question that we humans have. Now, I know there'll be many people who don't feel that, but that's the good thing about being here. I get to say what I think, right? So, but I do genuinely think that the kind of the high priests of materialism at the moment are scientists, right? And again, don't get me wrong, I'm not. I don't think they're evil. I think that science has done amazing things, and the scientific method is a incredibly important process and valuable, incredibly valuable, right? The fact that we're here doing this on Wi-Fi across the world is a testimony to science. So I'm not anti-science, don't get me wrong, but it's my experience and the experience of so many people historically that we are not fundamentally pieces of meat and brains. We are not material by nature. We are consciousness by nature and energy by nature. And interestingly, science continues to look for, or to prove the fundamental materialism of who we are. And the more they do it, the more they break it down into smaller and smaller pieces, the more they begin to realize those pieces are just space, right? And so scientific method's wonderful because it's really heading towards the reality that I think, and again, you can tell me if I'm wrong, Tim, but I think that inherently Indigenous people knew by their very nature that they were not separate from, we are not separate from earth, nature, river, trees. We're not separate. We cannot be. We are absolutely interdependent. And it's kind of, if I just choose one tradition, it's Buddhism 101, right? We don't have independently existing self. Why? Because we are a field of energy, a field of consciousness that is absolutely connected, cannot be separate from other humans or nature. So that, and in the past, that has not been, I think in the past, and religious traditions would have interpreted that differently or explained it differently. But I think in essence, those, the, and many cultures would call that consciousness God, right? That essence is who we are. And it therefore becomes the foundation of ethics, morality, truth, goodness, beauty. Those things are who we are. And we need to train AI, which will have incredible intelligence, to recognize that. But to do that, we have to recognize it. Because if you look at our cultures, currently, modern, particularly Western cultures, they're falling apart. And this incredible violence and authoritarianism is a reflection of the fact that there are those, particularly those with wealth, apparently wealth and power, think they're separate. And we think they're separate. And so we get to hate you and they get to hate us and, them and us and them, this will lead to our destruction. So for me, the discussion of AI, though, and of course I think it's important, we are already racing down the track of incredible intelligence being available to us. But the us that it's available to needs to recognize who we are, which is we are absolutely dependent on each other. We belong together. And if we think we're separate, we'll destroy each other. And we're already destroying nature. So it seems in some ways people say, oh, it's such a philosophical, perspective. And I say, it's not philosophical at all. It's day to day. We survive or not based on how we understand each other. And so that's why I put it at the start.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Ian, can I add something that this amazing Ed, by the way, such great things you're adding. That to pay honour to the little tiny bit of Indigenous science behind what you're talking about, quantum entanglement, is that there's less woo-woo towards stuff like astral travel and lucid dreaming and things like that. And one of the things I was always saying to my dad is, why do I sometimes when someone's about to call me, I know they're about to call me, and I thought, is he going to think I'm crazy? And I would talk to my dad about this and go, well, hang on, that's the old way. And in Western science, that's called parapsychological connection. And there's theories about quantum entanglement, that the more pathways, just the same as the brain, as we are exercising. And he said, well, the reason why this happened is that, think about before telephones and internet, that we needed to have there existed a sense that, I know that there's a ceremony or a corroboree happening in this part of Australia, or any land for that matter, and we had a sense of where it was and how many people, and time had no boundaries to that type of thing. But there was a strong link between what you're saying and a lot of Indigenous practices, which is then represented in our art from a topographical, astral projection, that type of thing. So there's a lot of grounding and stuff that's starting to be a little less unpopular, and a little bit people now are thinking, oh, well, hang on, maybe there's something there,
No, absolutely. I mean, I think science is finally beginning to catch up to Indigenous culture, right? It's finally beginning to catch up to the mystics of history, thousands of years, right? So, and
who have
again,
been outpowered, like you said, using power and force. That wasn't popular, so power removed them from the history books,
Yeah, no, exactly. So again, and I really do. I am at pain to say, look, scientists are not evil. It's not about going, oh, it's their fault, right? It's just it is a process that has gone askew in the sense of, I think, missed the main point. But again, I'm actually really confident, and quantum mechanics and other things, and I'm not a scientist, but even for a lay person, it's pretty clear that time and space are no longer considered by science to be the foundational element of existence. So if it's not time and space, it's something beyond time and space. Some people might call that consciousness. And again, there's lots of scientists now, way smarter than I, who are really writing profoundly important stuff about this change. So I think the change is coming, but we have a whole culture that is built on materialism. So AI for me is a beautiful tool. AI will never be conscious in my view, in the sense that it's created by we humans. It will be as conscious as we train it to be. Yeah, because
That might lead to my next question, if I can. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean.
No, go for it. Go for it, Tim.
A lot of your beautiful perspective to me is about inside as opposed to the external inside in space. And I noticed that you talk a lot more on trust than you do compassion. And I just wanted some clarification on that.
Yeah, and I think it could get to be semantic, right? In the sense that I think compassion is fundamentally important. I think I focus more on trust because I think it's people can relate to the skills that can be learnt to become more trustworthy. Sometimes I think compassion is often related to, again, spiritual folks, right? And it's a spiritual quality, and I think it is. I think it's a quality that everyone has actually, or potentially has. So I focus on trust just in the sense that I think within that, and I use the 4 traits of trust, they're all learnable skills, right? So I use it to avoid the kind of, oh yeah, compassion, cool, it's wonderful, woo woo, bye, right? Trust for me is much more. I think compassion is crucial, right? But compassion, I think, can more easily arise when we're learning the skills of something like trust. Along the way, you realize, because one of Rachel Botsman's 4 traits is empathy, right? So the capacity to care about others, right? And it's so basic, right? Do I trust you? Will someone trust me? 100%, no doubt, 110% if there could be. Even you can be incredibly reliable and competent, right? And even speak with integrity and live your life with integrity. But if someone feels, I don't think you really care about me now, gone. Trust is gone, right? So actually, to kind of flip on my original answer, compassion is, the capacity to care for others and understand the experience of others is, again, something that how I would just begin to describe compassion is fundamental to trust. For me, trust is just it's a bit more pragmatic. I can say, okay, work on trust. Along the way, you're going to discover that, I actually need to care about people for them to trust me. Yeah.
Goes hand in hand.
It sure does. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So many people fear AI, Ian, and what it might become. Why is the reason you're more hopeful?
I think I was born one of those 3/4 half full kind of people. Right. So, but I think I'm hopeful because I think there is an inevitable progress towards greater consciousness happening, that I think we humans are evolving, and it's sometimes on my good days, I think we're evolving wonderfully, and we will outstrip the issues that face us. And on my not so good days, I'm not so sure we're going to win this race between destroying ourselves and the planet and raising our consciousness. But my experience is that there's a great deal of energy moving towards the raising of human consciousness, and that AI can be a great supporter in that if we train it well, right? So I think one of the previous speakers from the last thing in the US that said 3.5% of the population can change the world. I'm not quite sure where that percentage comes from, but it sounds great to me. I think there is a growing understanding we can't keep living like this, and And again, it's not like the wisdom of history it's not like, oh, we've got to, decide on some new wisdom. Actually, there is literally centuries of incredible wisdom that we just are not paying attention to, right? And again, I mean, we're in Australia and we look at the Indigenous people who bring incredible wisdom, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of years of wisdom, and we didn't listen, right? So I think if we learn to listen, then people have a voice. It doesn't go the other way around. People don't have a voice, but they don't have a voice first. You actually got to listen, then somebody gets a voice, right? So I feel so many Indigenous people don't feel that, and Tim is much more in this world than I, right? But so many Indigenous people don't feel they have a voice because no one's been listening, right? So we need to learn what it means to listen. And again, for me, that goes back to the importance of consciousness but in relation to materialism, right? We are not separate. We're just not. We cannot be. We arise from that which is one, right? So that's why I'm hoping.
I know I'm balanced a bit with trust and compassion, and I want to ask a little bit like that. You say that the I-centeredness of the growth of spirituality across the world needs to change to a we-centeredness. Can you explain what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I'm really hopeful about the growth of what you might call spirituality throughout the world, right? But if you look again at Western culture, often the way that people are approaching their spirituality is my enlightenment, right? I'm going to meditate 3 hours a day and I'm going to focus and I'm going to become enlightened, right? For me, enlightenment's a team sport. It is not an individual sport, right? So it's about recognizing the we-ness, right? So in some sense, my particular enlightenment is irrelevant, right? Unless it involves the we. And again, I think so much of that wisdom, it's not like, oh, I'm so wise. It's nothing to do with me being wise. That wisdom's been around for centuries. We just need to, I think, open our eyes and understand it, and of course, then reinterpret it in modern terms, right? But so we don't have to find the wisdom. It's already been found. We actually just need to look for it. And for me, that's a we process, right? So, I look at so much, retreats and spiritual and mindfulness and these things, again, all of which I think are wonderful, don't get me wrong, right? But it's a multi-billion-dollar market in the US, just in the US, let alone the rest of the world, right? And I look at so many retreats, and people come to retreats and often pay huge amounts of money to go to a retreat. And there's a teacher who teaches beautiful and wonderful things, right? And at the end of the retreat goes, okay, good luck, bye. And then wonder why people fall off the perch, right? Because they actually don't have a community to go into, right? So, and I mean, the Buddha spoke clearly, right? The Sangha, the community, is the essential part of the path. You don't do it. We are not designed to do it alone, right? So if that's true, and I just know it is true, then we need community. We need to refocus on the community. And then AI will be a great support for that, because AI, and again, I'm a newbie at understanding AI, but its capacity to understand patterns is incredible and only getting more and more incredible. So the pattern of community, the fact that we need each other, is indisputable, right? And AI will recognize it and does recognize it. We just need to start living it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What about regarding the businesses, Ian? Why do you think businesses will be the most important agent of change in relation to trust and AI?
I think a couple of reasons. One is, I think many of the institutions that we've built our societies around are really crumbling because there is a breakdown of trust because they're not acting with trustworthiness, right? So to think, okay, I've got to reform politics, that'll change the world. Well, in Australia, for those international people listening internationally, we have a thing called the pub test, right? If you go down to the pub and say, yeah, I reckon we can change the world by changing politics. Let's get the politicians to change it. They'll say words that I can't say on this, on Zoom. Right? Or if you say, no, the bankers, they're the ones, they're the ones, they'll be great. They'll change the financial system to really support the idea that we are one and that we are a wonderful world that will live together. Pub test would be, they're not going to do it, right? So I think the capacity for those big institutions to do that is really under siege, right? Even the UN, right, which I think is a beautiful idea. So don't get me wrong, I think it's a beautiful idea and we need those, but the guardrails are being removed. And so what can replace that? I think community, but business, I think, particularly new businesses, business fulfills a really important role in the world, right? Because people need resources to live and to take care of their families. So we can't ignore the economies. They're really important. But I think technology, AI and blockchain particularly, are changing the dynamics of the economies so that small businesses can emerge relatively quickly. And the lack of trust for big institutions, including big businesses, needs somewhere to go. And I think naturally it will go to small and upcoming businesses. And a lot of existing businesses will actually, as you said, Ollie, will have to repurpose themselves. And I think a lot of that repurposing may be into dividing their roles, dividing things up into smaller, more trustable units. So, and so blockchain opens the door for crowdfunding in a way that has never existed, right? So it opens the door for the elements of each business to be tokenized and for people to invest in those businesses they trust and buy from those businesses that they trust. And so I think in the not too distant future, there will be trust tokens, which will become a grounding token of interaction between people. So my decisions about whether I'm going to buy a particular product or invest in a particular business will be based on trust. And business with the greatest number of trust tokens and will be the winner. Will be the winner. Right? So, and I think, and again, this is my bias, right? But I think by nature we want to trust. We are designed to trust, and we're designed to receive those who trust us, right? And the world is becoming bereft of trust. People got to go somewhere. They want by nature, we want that trust. So of course there's those we love, there's our families, that's of course important, right? But from a point of view of changing the dynamics of economies, political structures, governments, the larger institutions, I don't think will be the way. And I think business is most like, I could be wrong, as my wife will tell you, I could be wrong. But my sense is that the vehicle of greatest change will be people acting through economic structures like businesses, not big organizations.
I'd love to add a point that as part of this forum on developing the nation's AI policy, there was an amazing lady there called Katie Gero, Gero, and she's done a lot of research. And her point was that, hang on, I don't want my stuff in AI. I don't want to trust AI. You know, and to Ed's point about, you know, adoption and integration of all sorts of communities, wouldn't it be nice if we could have an environment where people that distrust, we could honor that and say, hey, you can be in this environment, and work together with interoperability, but you trust that we're not going to breach your trust because you don't want to extend your trust to these certain structures. So I think if we can have that level of wisdom and that level of compassion, I think that would be a really wonderful measure.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
before we run out of time, and I just want to also reflect what you guys said earlier, that we are so appreciative of Deepu, who's helped us put this together, June, Christina,
Mhm.
and the various teams behind this. I'm just in absolute awe that this came together. That was really quite amazing. And yeah, so thank you from us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tim, for mentioning it. Obviously, from all of us, we're really appreciative, and we understand there's so much effort and time that goes into this organizing such events. So we're very grateful to have this opportunity to hopefully share some good learnings and things that others can potentially use.